Hey everybody, Espira, and welcome back to the Super Combo Podcast. As usual, I'm joined by our co-host, Chris of UniX. Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Been doing a lot of testing, kind of getting the swing of things. Took a couple day break from making Dragon Ball Super content just to kind of refresh the wheels. But it is good to be back on here. Fellow content creator, world's best U7 Gohan player, and resident friend to my good old pal Espy. I love it. I'm happy to be here. Happy to start off the week sort of with another podcast. Let's go.
Wow, you're shooting all the bullets with that intro, ain't you? Why did I have to go down with it?
I don't know what you're talking about. I feel like you drawing attention to it just makes it worse. And if anybody got anything to say, come see me. Come see me on Untap. Come see me on webcam. No, but for real, I'm just having fun.
I mean, fun is what we're aiming to have, especially since now the format's now available to us. Now the ban list has been announced. It's not officially released until the official release of the next set. But on February 4th, they did shoot it off. I managed to actually get my video out really early because it just so happened to be the one morning where I didn't prep my stuff for work the day before. So I actually had to get out of bed when my alarm told me to, and I actually snap caught my Discord talking about the bans, which had me jump on and make the video. But obviously we're going to dig more into it. And that's our biggest topic for today is just the ban list, and then we'll do the SC mailbag afterwards. So it's the biggest thing. It's the only real thing to talk about because now at least we have a full picture. And I think I said it succinctly in my ban list video, and we can go in depth here. I think 50% of it is absolute fire and exactly what the format needed. And then the other half is kind of ass. And I'm very confused as to where I'm not confused as to where the focus was for this ban list, but I don't necessarily agree with all the choices.
See, I feel like when it comes to this ban list, Bandai was playing it very, very, very safe because the only thing all right, I think we said it before, despite how much we bitch and complain about yellow, last format with yellow being not tier 0, but I'd say definite tier 0.75 or tier 0.50, I think that yes, if you're playing yellow, you just had to have a functioning brainstem and practice well, and you weren't losing to a lot more of the game. However, yellow versus yellow was a very, very, very skill intensive format, or skill intensive matchup. So I think with this ban list, Bandai punched what most of us would call cancerous. And this part is something I do have to kind of comment on. The banning of Cell Surge is kind of wild because Cell Surge kept slower control decks at bay. Because those decks don't function off of 2-3 cards in hand at a time. They need to have their book of defense and reactive measures at the ready. And this is going to be what allows them to, screw over your plays, keep themselves alive, but also eventually, whittle you down to the point where you don't have the assets to defend yourself against their bombs. Cell Surge, while people definitely hated Cell Surge as a color or as a deck, Cell Surge wasn't a de facto tier 0 deck. And that shows because if you weren't named Jordan Markle, you really weren't getting too many tops with it. I'm really, it was almost like a Jordan nerf more than a Cell Surge nerf. But the deck, you could side into options that made the deck almost irrelevant. Notice that PPG Tampa, Cell Surge didn't hit the top cut because people were just like, nope, ain't gonna happen. I got my dabs, I got my monkeys, and it was not a good environment for it. But I feel like Cell Surge, as much as I complained about it, was a lot like Vegeta OTK, King Vegeta OTK to me. It was like a deck where, yes, it could feel toxic, but there are cards you can use to prepare for it. There are cards you can main deck to make the matchup easier, but did everybody want to run Self-Awakeners? No. Did everybody want to run more aggressive plays in their main board because they didn't want to run into a deck that would tear them apart before they got to their mid game? No. Did every Icarus player want to play Saiyan or whatever it was to spit out 2 vanillas and start punching your opponent in the dick? No. So we kind of just said it was like AIDS.
That's I mean, because it was.
It was AIDS. Definitely AIDS.
Don't get me wrong. it's it's a gatekeeper deck to the point of, I think, and here's the thing, maybe it, like I think a lot of people are very much on board with saying, and we haven't actually said about, so for anyone who's not aware, the ban list, Cell Surge got banned, but
Oh yeah, my
so
bad.
but but I think the big thing is just like, and like I understand people's counterpoints that they say, you know, all we need is another activate main draw leader to effectively be in another Cell Surge situation, which I don't think is 100% true. I think Cell had a lot that lends itself well to that strategy. But nevertheless, it's the same idea. And I guess hitting a lot of the more key hand destruction cards that would make hand destruction not feel as bad, but still let it be prevalent, like I would get. But there are a lot of decks that just actually can't afford to run the cards you're talking about, right? Like against like King Vegeta, there are in color cards that I can run that kind of floodgate my opponent out of the game, or can boost my opponent out of, or even like a protector of the people at the end is just an additional negate, you know. But I can't. Most main decks can't main board like hand destruction hate without like
You're
severely hurting their game plan against other decks.
I look, I'm simple, all right? I feel like you can either play aggressive strats or your deck has the room to run monkey in it. I just I don't know. If you can't play monkey, you can probably fit some one drop double strikers in your deck. It's probably built that way. And if you can't play those one drop double strikers, if it does nothing for you, chances your deck is slow enough to play monkey. But I know I definitely get what you say. It's a lot harder to play just small little techs to outsell Surge because ain't nobody trying to mana Deborah in best of three. Like
I will
just
say
nobody.
though, I will say though, I am slightly surprised that this, well, actually, this may be just because it's not an official format yet, but I am just surprised that this comes on the heels of our first tournament that's going to be best of one sided. And I'm not gonna lie, like I know they've said this isn't our official format for OP yet, and they want to see how it is. I get they want to test it, which is like fair, but I think it is honestly going to be the way they're going to continue with the game forward, especially seeing as like online regionals are probably not going anywhere this year. Um, and like you said, like especially not only in the PPG tournament did we see Cell Surge not top, but Cell Surge is especially going to have a much harder time in a world where you can just pre-side into your sideboard hate. Um, so I am a little surprised that they went that far on it, but also I think this might be like a 50-50, just like half of it's maybe power level and the other half is just player experience. And I think a lot of people really dislike losing to this deck. I mean, I even had a stream where I played against a Cell Surge opponent as Janemba, and the entire game I was on my phone. Like I was kind of making a bit out of it, but it's because like by turn 3 I lost my entire hand, and I knew that's all I was because my leader like swings, mills 2, and then passes, right? So now I understand part of this because I'm running Janemba, but nevertheless, right? Like it's I think part of it is user experience, and the other half might be just like quote unquote power level. But I am slightly shocked because we are going to jump into best of one pre-sided, and I think that meta is like incredibly different to decks that have incredible hate cards like Cell does in the face of like Deborah and stuff like that.
Y'all.
So we are going to go through. So of course that was the first ban, so we can get that out of the way. As far as the overall ban list, there were 3 bans, 1 limit, and 5 erratas. We're gonna go into them down by down and just kind of give overall thoughts. But my biggest thing is I'm so tired of erratas. I hate the fact that we're going into a set and there's like more erratas than anything else, especially for cards that haven't even come out in the set. Like the Deborah because it was misspelled. Like, oh come on. I mean the Vegeta I think is a little bit beyond that. I think that's actually like a functional change. But so going down from, and the big highlight of this is they really wanted to hit Gogeta Xeno. You know, we've been complaining about yellow nonstop since for the past 3 months now at this point, I feel like. And it's they saw Gogeta and they're like, nah, this is the deck that needs to go. And even then they didn't kill the deck, but they did like tone down its consistency, with the first ban being the Unrelenting Assault Trunks. This one being where if it's sent to warp, it just goes back to your hand. The idea there is that the card was created so that you can loop his overwhelm turn after turn after turn. But obviously, the deck that's mills into warp uses it to great effect. And we saw Juan Soto at Worlds like mill 3, draw 3, which is obviously a little bit high roll for the deck on that front. But I mean, this is fine, right? Like, this doesn't kill the deck, but it's one of the tuning that we see in this ban list that like is trying to bring Gogeta Xeno like a little bit, pull it back a couple. The deck isn't, and I like these kind of ban lists, don't get me wrong. I just think the deck they had the biggest target for probably wasn't the right one. But nevertheless, like I think this reins it in pretty decently.
Yeah, I mean, so I almost got charged. I'm looking over the ban list right now and I'm kind of getting triggered. The Trunks is it was a hit, but like it was kind of like weird. Like imagine a dude with like rocket powered like rollerblades. This is gonna sound weird, but imagine a dude with like rocket power rollerblades and then like just like a Glock, and he's just zipping around like just capping people. And you could like ban the Glock, or you could give him a worse gun, give him like a BB gun, or you could like make him walk, or you could like I don't know hinder this assailant anyways. But all you do is like nerf his rocket booster on his rollerblades. That's what Trunks feels like to me. Like, is he going to be as fast? No. Is he going to plus as randomly? No. Is he going to easily reset his graveyard and send those Gokus and Vegetas back? No. But you know what he's still going to do? Turn one thwarting your ass. Turn
Yep.
two thwarting your ass if you get rid of it on turn one. Like, he's still going to remove top five and potentially high roll really, really hard. He's still going to be able to thwarting your ass and overroll in the same turn. He's still going to like this man is still going around on normal rollerblades with a gun. It's just not he's just not stepping around. Like he's not broken anymore. He's still busted.
Yeah.
Man, that's how I feel about the Trunks game.
Yeah, it's like a consistency thing. Like it doesn't actually like do anything to the biggest issues that people had with the deck, but it does kind of like on that sense like rein it in a little bit. And we see that smothered actually in the errata section as well. But then the last ban for this ban list is Fu Shrouded, which I am absolutely ecstatic about. I think it's been a long time. I mean, here's the thing. I'm the type of guy who will 100% support when a card needs to go or an archetype needs to be broken. But at the same time, I'm the guy who will abuse it the most, right? Like when Super Shenron was a deck, and for our newer listeners, Super Shenron was a deck where if you had X amount of cards in your drop area, you can take another turn. And this was combined with the swap engine to effectively have like two 15-minute long turns by your like turn 3, turn 4 by just hyper milling yourself out. So I'm like, I walk up to locals and I'm like, bro, Super Shenron is so toxic. It's bad for the game. And then 2 minutes later, I'm like, all right, send these 30 cards to warp. Take my next turn.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I'll use broken cards, and Fu has carried me to a good number of wins. But I think the biggest thing for Fu, and like a lot of people have told me for a long time, and I had this argument on my team talk with my teammates, and I don't disagree with the fact that 6 energy should be game-ending abilities or close to it. I just, however, don't believe that that should come with like almost no answers. Blue is the only color that can consistently deal with Fu if you have a Unison on board. Yellow can like handle it if you're like a Frieza's army leader or if you're running like the yellow SER. So aside from like a couple of other techs, but they're like not really played. So in that front, it just feels to me that a card that effectively can close out 3 out of the 5 colors in our game is a little bit ridiculous, especially since there's no real counterplay. Black has like 1, and then your opponent can like play around it. So to me, it's more so the fact that yes, 6 energy plays should be game ending or should press your opponent to a point where they're game ending. I just don't think it should come in a way that prevents like almost any form of counterplay. I can play the game perfectly and still lose to a Fu because he just literally turns off my deck. And like that's no fun. Like no one wants to lose because their deck got turned off. And this is coming from the guy who plays Apex of Power. You know? So I think in general this is a very good move, and it probably should have came a couple of sets ago. And I'm personally glad to see him go, even though I tech him in almost every single one of my decks.
So, all right, I'm gonna have another hot spicy take. Imagine, okay, that there's like you live in like a town, okay, a secluded town, and this town is called Metaville.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of dudes in Metaville that are like martial arts masters, and no matter how hard you train, no matter how hard you play, like Yellow San can just parry you for days and then crack back at you for like critical strikes. You know what I mean? Like Black Sama is just coming through and raining blows upon your head. You just can't break through the wall, okay?
True.
And then there's like Fu, shrouded in mystery. an enigmatic assailant
Oh my
who
god.
just like just no matter what happens when he enters the fight, he just ends up butt pounding his assailant no matter what. Now, forcible butt pounding is wrong, but Fu's the only man that can stop this bullying from happening around Metaville.
Then
Should he be in jail? Yes. But is he also doing God's work, but in the wrong way? Yes. Were you getting out of yellow? Were you getting through yellow's bullshit without the
no,
help of Fu Shrouded in Mystery? No.
probably
But
not.
is Fu Shrouded in Mystery unhealthy for the game? Yes. And this is the dilemma I have. This is the dilemma I had with Fu. Fu is the Dark Knight. Like, he's not the hero that like we deserve. Like, he's the hero. Like, damn, he's like Fu. Oh man, like I'll pour one out for Fu. Fu needed to go to prison, but I will still pour one out for Fu.
That's fair. That's fair. I can respect that. I mean, it's two angled, right? Like no control deck, like it's two things. Control decks couldn't exist because like red control decks couldn't exist. Green control decks couldn't really exist because Fu just like wins on the spot when he comes down. And like I understand what you're saying. Like yes, yellow was doing his thing, black was doing his thing, and 100. Well, it's mostly yellow because if you're at 6 energy against black, odds are you're probably winning anyways. But the biggest thing here is just that like I think that yellow should have went with Fu, and I don't think it really did.
I think Fu should have just been eroded. If your leader is yellow or you have yellow energy, this card cannot be played. Like every color but Fu. Every color but yellow has access to Fu. Balanced, easy clap.
Yeah, there we go. That's what the game needed. And yeah, that's the thing because yellow could run Fu also, right? Like it was just, oh my god.
That was also the worst part about Fu. Like you'd be like Fu, butt pounder of the broken, savior of the masses, and then all of a sudden Fu's on the other side of the board, and you're like, what happened? And Fu's like, I work for the highest bidder, prepare to take the butt pounding, and you're like, no. And then that's it. That's it. Cheeks effectively clapped. I am your friend. Oh my god, did you just lose the dice? Ooh.
I'm gonna go walk over there real quick.
Yeah, look. I'm an equal opportunity employer. Whoever hits 6 energy first and 10 cards and drop first is the person I'm gonna do the work for. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it's tough.
He was fair. If anything, he was fair in terms of, he was an equal opportunity. Anybody can play.
I mean, yeah, sure. He was a Thanos snap. Like, here, you 50-50 odds. Go for it.
Thanos clap. I mean, yeah, it's just Fu is wild. Fu is wild.
Yeah.
To the point where I can honestly say, if you've ever resolved a Fu and still lost that game, the problem was you. Like, the problem was not the game state. It was not the card. That particular moment. I'm not saying you're a bad player. I'm not saying that you're like just trash. I'm just saying like there's probably something that could have happened differently in that game that would have led to that turn being the game when Fu resolved. Because it's like there are only so many ways. I guess like unexpected turn. Ironically, a card called unexpected turn can be a card that you can't see coming depending on the situation, and you just get unexpected turn in your Fu. It's like, never mind. I'll take it back. But
yeah.
Shout out to Fu. Shout out to that one, Fu.
Yeah, that's fair. Had a good time with him, and now he's off to the Shadow Realm. Now, moving on to the limited. Power of Super Saiyan. All claps around. I think there's a huge win. I mean, here's the thing. I'm on record. Everyone knows it. I hate limits. I think they're bad for the game. I think they create feel bad situations when you see your one of or when you don't see your one of. If you never end up seeing your one of in the game, you feel bad because it's like it's a card that could have gotten you out, blah, blah, blah. That's the feel bad on the other side. As the opponent, it feels bad because, yeah, of course you've seen your one of. And I feel like yellow's becoming this color on and on and on that, oh, of course you saw your one of. Of course you saw your one of. Of course you saw your one of. And it's just incredibly frustrating, man. Like, play against Golden Frieza and they see their Cold Bloodlust, their Bergamo, their Power of Super Saiyan, and you're like, yeah, okay, this feels sick. But if anything, I'm just glad I got hit. I'm not a fan of limits, but I'm glad like something happened to it. I think it's a one of because it's going to be a winter stamp card for the next OP season. I think that's why. But I'm open to be proven wrong.
We don't need another Power Super Saiyan. We don't need a Power Super Saiyan being a. That'd be so funky. And I'm kind of having an issue right now because, like, can you imagine how salty? Like, I just thought about it again when you said like feels bad situations. Can you like just just feel it in your bones when your opponent's like, okay, I'm a power of a Super Saiyan, and you're like, okay, well, there's only one into the Bergamo, and you're like, all right, like,
Right?
get
It's
out of
so.
my.
It's just like, why? And then if it happens to be a Frieza leader, they'll code Bloodlust your ass, and you're like, oh my fuck. So yeah, it's a big point of contention for it. But I'm glad it got hit. Now, the unfortunate. Well, actually, that's not true. If we're gonna bundle them, we can jump into the erratas. And Icarus got errata to basically a ban. There are some people who've been trying to tell me that this is fair, and I'm like, no, this is unplayable. this, ain't nobody trying to start their turn by paying 1 energy to draw their 1 card. Like, no. 1 energy does a million things in this game. Drawing a card is not what you want to be doing. When like every other leader does it for free. So those combined are the yellow hits, but I think the leader hit actually doesn't matter. Because we've been saying it forever, you can substitute that yellow leader with anything, and we have hot and spicy yellow leaders coming next set, and they fulfill the role very well. Now, sure, their packages are a little bit more full than the Icarus package, and they don't draw as much, but that's fine, because yellow's card pool can turn any mediocre archetype into a real archetype. So, I think this podcast is probably going to stay the bitch about yellow podcast for maybe another couple months. That's my prediction. My prediction. I know red now has a little bit of a better chance against pressing against yellow, especially with the new red stuff we're getting, but I still think yellow is going to be obnoxious to play against.
Like, I think so too. It's kind of weird because essentially, the way I see it, yellow's biggest issue was that yellow had no chinks in its armor. And now with Power of a Super Saiyan going down to 1, you can't willy-nilly play it out. This makes your extra card setup harder because you have to use suboptimal extra cards. Before you had a clean suite of extra cards that just did the work you needed to do. Now you have to be playing cards that, like, lots of people are like, oh, there are plenty of other yellow extra cards. Okay, if you would rather play 4 of 3 different yellow extra cards, how do you not think that your deck's going to get worse when you have to start playing copies of shit like Forbidden Power? Like, if the deck didn't make it in, if the card didn't make it in as even a tech previously, that means it simply was not good enough to hit the main board. And if it wasn't sideboard either, I just have to let you know, like, you're playing suboptimal cards in your yellow deck now, which means there will be turns where your yellow defense was not as strong as it could have been. Now, granted, you could still high roll. Any deck can high roll. And if a yellow deck high rolls, it will still feel exactly like it did before. But there will be turns where your opponent doesn't high roll, or in more probable cases, there will be consecutive turns where you're able to pressure yellow, and on one of those turns, they will slip.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I don't know. I agree. That I've always said, right? Like, what Power of Super Saiyan, now don't get me wrong, Power of Super Saiyan is an incredibly stupid card. It does way too much for free. But the big thing is that it was the glue, right? It's that extra card that feeds like your cheapeners in the form of Riposte as well as Steadfast. And it does a lot of setup in terms of your tapping shenanigans to get your poutine. Like, it feels like glue. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of cards can fill in the space, and while yes, it'll feel clunkier bringing in the new stuff, we're still getting things like Black Kamehameha and such. So there are substitutes coming down the pipeline that are kind of going to help supplement, but they don't glue as well as Power of Super Saiyan, because Power of Super Saiyan turns on like 6 other cards between Poutine, Bergamo, both your Steadfast and Robotics, as well as a couple of other yellow plays. So in general, it's a good hit. It's the right hit. I think Power of Super Saiyan was 100% the top of people's target just because of how much it does. But I still think the card pool is too good. Every single card in yellow cantrips. I don't know why. Why does Turtle cantrip? Why does Steadfast cantrip? You know, if at this point I'm just shocked that Robotic Riposte doesn't cantrip. But you can play it as a 1 cost on both turns. So I guess whatever, if you just need some 15k beat stick, you can use it, right? Like, it just feels like a lot of other colors have downside, and yellow has no downside. It'll always plus on everything it does. And like, you're just kind of stuck in this world of, okay, well, what do I do now? So I think it'll that you can now there are opportunities to catch your opponent slipping. There are opportunities to catch your opponent being stuck in a spot where like you can find those, like you said, like those ins, because they don't have the consistency of having a one as many cards that Icarus would allow, as well as just 4 of Power Super Saiyans that are able to shut you down turn after turn. But I still think it's going to be, I don't know if oppressive, but just an uphill battle for sure. For any yellow deck, because its entire card pool is generic, outside of Turtles, which is like linked to Saiyans, but that's fine. The best ones are Saiyans anyways.
Well said, sir. Well said.
Moving on, here's an additional hit, but not only to the Gogeta Xeno deck, but like to most black decks, because almost every single black deck is a thwarting deck this day. Son Goku True Fighting Spirit. So this is the one where if you activate a negate, you had to warp a card from your hand, OPT. And the big thing is that against a lot of decks, if you're just trying to defend, it is very easy for black decks to be able to get 2-3 of these guys on board. And it's like, did you want to activate your 1 negate to stop dying from this like deck that can swing with like 1 cost L5 25k double strikers, and then 1 cost 20ks that float into 2 10ks? Like it's you know the typical thing that's a deck do. Well, you're gonna have to warp 2 to 3 cards in your hand plus the actual negate itself. So it's a huge powerful ability, and now it has unique, so you can only get 1 of. I like this. I think the card as a card that has unique is fine. I think the issue with the card was 100% the fact that you can stack 4 or 5, like 3-4 of these on the board, and then like hard punish your opponent for just trying to live.
Like fucking oops, freaking for real. Like it's actually really funny because I was just on a podcast with Team Berserk. They asked me kind of late, Team Berserk / TCG medals, and it was going back and forth between cards we wanted to see. And when it came to True Fighting Spirit, half the room was like, it needs to go. And of course, Element, who had a good showing with Mass Sand, was like, no, 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 no. That would just ruin the deck. And I straight up was like, homie, the card doesn't need to go because functionality wise, it's a 5k Goku and it's a Self Awakener. But what it needs to not be able to do is being held in deuces to be played for 2 energy when you had an established board and you knew you were going to go in. So I literally, you guys can go to Team Berserk's channel and check their last podcast, or maybe 2 podcasts ago. I don't know how often they do them. And somewhere in that 2-hour long mess, because you know if I'm in it, the conversation kind of be going. I do straight up say that a unique would be the best way to handle this card because it would not hinder the functionality of that 5k Goku in Gogeta Zeno, but it would stop it from doing its most toxic things.
Yeah,
And
you even said in your Banlist prediction video.
yeah. And oh yeah, I did. Hey, you're right. And it's just like, yeah, that's a much shorter video. You should look at that as well. But factual, like, it's just kind of one of those things where when you look at that card, I understand why it was made to a T. Black does not have good defenses. And in this game, there are 2 types of kind of hand destruction through effect and hand destruction through pressure. And Black's way of defending itself in a roundabout sense is being so much pressure that you are forced to drop cards out of your hand. But that is not enough sometimes because defensive cards have to start 2 for wanting to actually be as effective as people just turning their body sideways. So True Fighting Spirit was a card that was designed with that in mind. You play it on the board, you apply pressure. They not only have to combo out of swings, but if they choose to negate, they have to get rid of not just the card and maybe a cost on top of that, but a second card. So on top of that, True Fighting Spirit was following, it was just trying to reinforce what Black's theme was and also help Black not die. If you got to get rid of 5 cards because you comboed out of a 25k, but you also negated and warped, that's 5 less cards you have to beat my face in with next turn. The issue is that Black is getting stronger along with other colors. True Fighting Spirit can be held in pairs, and when you have to go neg 4 to play a Topo, that can still be super Kamehameha. Like,
Yeah.
sheesh. So yeah, the card just unique is perfect.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that the card needs to exist. I think it does too much for the decks that run it, and I think unique's perfect. I think it's just fine. You can combo the rest away. 100% the issue is just if you had an established board, so you could just clock down 3 of these guys and then be like, all right, you gonna take it, boy. And now that it's just a tip. Now you don't have to take it all. So I think it's well warranted. in this case.
Clip it. Clip that lie. Clip that lie. If you guys do not clip George saying it's just the tip, you don't have to take it all. I will lose faith in every person that views this video. I'm gonna clip it. I'm gonna clip it. Continue.
And the final hit to the Gogeta Xeno deck, for the most part, is a Black Smoke Dragon. So this is the Unison that was used a good number worlds and a number of national decks, where you can kind of play it for free with the Supreme Kai, and then you would just like neg it to draw an additional card. So it's just like a free hand advantage cycling engine. I don't think this was a power level thing. I think it's kind of stupid. But at the same time, they said like design space when they made it. They said, hey, you know, it's not really meant to be used this way. And at the same time, it might mess up some things that are coming down the line. Now, here's the thing. I'm a little suspect whenever Bandai says we're removing this because of design reasons. Because, you know, Cell is a card that's on a limited list because of design reasons. And they never made good on that promise like 7 sets later. So I'm a little... It's been more than 7 sets now. Sheesh. It's been forever since that card was limited. Just to say. So on that front, I feel a little bit iffy. But again, another light tap, which some decks weren't even running it. So it's whatever. Some people just run Mirror for the pressure. But it's another light tap to Gogeta, which, you know, is fine. It kept the deck alive. I think there's some really weird hits. I don't think... And again, like, I don't think any of this stuff overall impacts it huge. I think the biggest thing is probably True Fighting Spirit being unique. But otherwise, still just another light tap. The deck's going to do fine. The deck still lives. And if all of these hits are relevant enough to not push people to play Gogeta, you know, then they'll just play Trunks. I think Trunks is a worthwhile substitution. And I really liked what you said on your video about the Banlist, where it's, you know, or the meta and what to expect of the meta now that we know what it's kind of looking like. That Trunks, while not having as high roll as Gogeta, is definitely more consistent. And I think just on that front alone will lend itself better to being a top meta contender for Black moving into the next set.
Yeah. I definitely agree. No, I there's gonna be some choices. There are definitely about to be some choices, and I dig that. I agree with you. Black Smoke was kind of weird because they're like, oh, it's a draw one that wasn't intended. Dude, I actually thought it was cool. There was a generic Black Unison that could just warp stuff from people's graves. I thought that was cute. That's a very nice like effect. That's a niche effect, but it also feels right at home in Black, and it gives Black a bit of utility that other decks don't have. If you happen to remove all 4 vanillas from like Icarus, you cut off their, like, they get 1 to 2 draws off that. Well, they get 2 draws off that thing, and then you'd be able to cut off their second draw for the rest of the game if they can't ever establish that again. I'm like, that's awesome. That is literally something cute that only Black could do.
Yeah. Who knows? I think they might still be trying to figure out what they want to do with the color plywood Black, which is like kind of fair. Who knows? Now it's errata to being only demon on race, which is fine. I mean, those decks don't really see play, so it's not a ban. Like maybe someday the cards will see play again, and it probably does still see play in the decks that it's intended for. But anyways, it's one less flex option for Black, which is still fine. There are ways for Black to still kind of do stuff with Word. They're just not as... They're just more clunky than what this is. But nevertheless, moving beyond that, the new Deborah leader that's coming in Realm of the Gods, God and errata. This is literally just text errata. It wasn't written properly. So it says now that it sends that card to its owner's warp instead of to warp, I think, or something like that. So no big deal. The last errata, and like they say, like this was a change in card text because it wasn't being played as intended, which I think is BS. Is the promo Vegeta, the Crimson Warrior. This is the one that's supposed to be the Vegeta alternative to the blue-red ramp strategy that utilizes not Veku. The deck doesn't work with Veku, but it does work with the old Gogeta stuff, and we got some new blue-red Gogeta stuff that came in. So the change being that the Activate Battle was something of contention with the community because like, oh, it's an optional cost, and no, it's busted, and first off, no, it's not. But it's been now changed that instead you get to choose up to 1 or blue or red Saiyan in your hand and discard it to be able to look at the top 3. It's choose one. You have to pitch. This 100% turned a fringe tier 2 maybe leader into basically unplayable. It is so incredibly bad. And like I understand some are like, but why is there an optional cost? Well, because if you understand the archetype needs a blue red Saiyan in your trash to be able to go ahead and ramp with it with the 5-drop Gogeta. So it kind of makes sense on that front, but it is going to feel so incredibly bad that you're going to spend half your game pitching to use his ability and then you're going to whiff. Because your deck's not going to be composed of 30 Gokus and Vegetas. They suck. They're all fusion fodder. Now, mind you, the new blue-red ones are pretty okay. Okay, because at least you don't feel bad about playing them late game because they scale to how much energy you have. So they make half decent beat sticks. But for the most part, red Vegeta and Goku BRs suck. They're all fusion fodder, which means like, yeah, you're getting an extra 5k. And like people are like, you don't understand how broken a 5k is. Like, no, the reason Icarus is broken isn't because it's drawing 5ks. Is because it's drawing the most busted cards in the game. Like, no, not all 5ks are created equal. Like, there's like, you know what Juan Soto did with all the trunks that he drew when he drew 3? The exact turn after he charged 1 and then he like pitched the other 2. So like, no, not all 5ks are created equal, especially since you're going to awaken on turn 3 anyways. So once you're awakened on turn 3, you got 2 turns of plussing an additional 1. And like I get frustrated, and some people don't think it's fine because it's ridiculous and or the way it was written before. I think this 100% makes the leader unplayable. I was interested in playing the leader, and here's the thing: he still does cute and interesting things. He's still a cute leader. He still gives Gogeta's like fusion ability, which is kind of cool, and he's interesting. But that's all he is now. He's interesting. I don't think he's anymore being playable, and like any excitement I had to play this leader is pretty much gone at this point.
I mean, I kind of thought all that leader did was stack mad 5Ks in hand and then do mediocre plays to begin with. So
yeah, that's the thing. If you thought it was doing that before, sure as hell ain't doing that now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm overly passionate about it because, of course, Ramp Gogeta is one of my babies. It's one of the decks that people coin with me, deservedly so. So I don't know, it's just unfortunate.
So you're like to Ramp Gogeta like what I am, the U7 Red Gohan.
Very much so. Yeah, one of the only people to do well with it.
So respectively, we're the best Ramp Gogeta and U7 Red Gohan players in the world. That's what you're saying.
It could be argued that way, yes.
Don't arguments have to have like plausible sides on both sides? I think this is pretty one-sided.
Yeah, I mean it's essentially fact.
Like I just need anybody else to pull up a premier win with either deck, and we'll be good. I'm done.
Yeah, you're good.
You should have ever played. You made me do this.
So that's the ban list. Overall thoughts. I think it was 50-50. I think some hits were kind of like whatever. I think some hits were exactly what were being like felt as the big pain points of the format, but I feel like there were some pretty flagrant misses.
Yeah. Mainly I'm looking at you, Swift Retaliation Cooler. You live to be toxic yet another day. I won't even front. Like the moment I saw the ban list, I sent that immediate message to the powers that be. It's like, oh, so y'all just let Cooler stay out here on the streets, huh? What? People that didn't even need to be in prison are looking through the bars watching. Like I should. Oh my gosh, I should make that. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna take the Squidward meme. Squidward looking out the window.
Oh, looking out the window.
I'm trying to think what card has been undeservedly banned. You know what? It might have to be Fu. I might have to be like Fu Shrouded in Mystery looking out the window, and then be like Swift Retaliation Cooler. And what else? What else should have been on that list, bro? Swift Retaliation Cooler, Morgamo running outside.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. Like,
oh my gosh, that shit is wild though. Like, I mean, for real, that I can't be any more transparent about Swift Retaliation Cooler. Like, it's just one of the high echelons of yellow cards that was just like built in a way where like there's no way you can play that card. The only way you can play that card badly is by playing it on a card that was bad to play it on. Otherwise, the card just goes like 2 fucking plus. Like I think a long time ago I joked about Turles being like, oh, what if I don't have 2 cards to destroy? Oh, you're right. Let's make it so that if you only destroy 1, you get to draw a card. That way you can't even draw it bad. Like Cooler is the same way. It's like you pay 3 to counter somebody. Counter is a very strong effect and should be used very sparingly in this game. But if that was not enough, you then get to count up the amount of cards that are tapping your opponent's side of the board. And spoiler alert: if your opponent was countering in a position where you countering them could lead to a game-winning shotgun, I'm gonna just go out here and probably say they're tapped the fuck out. So you tap them out with their negate, you counter it, and then because you were playing the game the exact way you were gonna counter it, you draw 1 from effect, and then you get rewarded and you get a second draw. Like, I don't even know why they put a condition on that second draw. If you use Cooler, by the time you have 3 energy to counter somebody's play after you've made a play of your own, you are at the point where 6 permanents will be tapped. And so Cooler just rewards you.
Yeah.
Oh, dog, I heard you. You just countered their negate. Well, here's 2 more cards to potentially combo with. You deserve it, champ. What? Excuse me?
Yeah.
Oh, I hate it. Yellow is the definition. No meme, no pun intended. Yellow is simply built different.
Yeah. I mean, once we're at a point where I'm at like 4 to 5 energy against yellow, I'm like, at any point in time, they can just decide to kill me. Because I can like negate. No. All right, cool. I tapped 1 for nothing, I guess. You drew 2 cards and now you're just going to kill me. I'm like, all right,
Blue.
cool. Yeah.
Hear me out. It's a red card. This card says tap 3. If your opponent has lost life this turn, you may minus 2,000 or 25,000 on one of their battle cards. And then, I don't know, discard a card from your hand. That's a red effect, okay? A green effect. If your leader is set 15 Champa, set 16 Champa. If your leader is set 16 Champa, you may destroy a card through barrier, and it costs 2 energy. It's like, okay, decent cost, cool effect, but you have to run a really weird obscure leader that they're never going to make again. And they even put the serial number on it, so you have to use set 16 Champa. Then you get to black, and black will just be like a little awkward. Like, remove 4 cards in grave, warp a battle card with 4 or less cost. If you removed all 4 black battle cards with like 30k power, then it doesn't have a cost restriction. It goes through barrier. Something that could be kind of borderline really powerful, but the deck has to be built with it. And then yellow is just like, pay 2 energy, tap something down, blow up that card through barrier after negating its effect, and draw a card. And then to make it blue, you add 3 more additional energy to the cost, get rid of the negation effect, untap something, and then draw. That's just pretty much how it is. Oh yeah, and it doesn't ignore barrier, and it doesn't blow it up. It actually sends it to the bottom of the deck. That's the key transition from yellow to blue. Make it cost more. It bottom decks it. There's no negation. There's no barrier or negation. Like that's the Bandai secret sauce.
Yeah. Yeah, it's painful. Wild. It's painful. There's just, and that's the thing with yellow, is that there's so many situations where it's just like I can't do anything. Yesterday I went to locals and I went undefeated with SS4 Bardock up until finals. And then I played against Max, who runs Golden Frieza. And that means a multitude of things. It means, for anyone who plays SS4 Bardock, you're basically kind of like, your deck kind of lives and dies by the SS4 Gogeta. It, not necessarily, you can run like kind of a swarmy package with the 2 and 3 drops. But for the most part, the most impactful thing that your deck does is that. Well, I'm never getting that card off. Why? Because Steadfast exists. Can I do the attack swarm strategy? No, because Riposte exists. Can I negate it so I don't, can I negate his attack so I don't die? No, because you can just counter Cooler. And then it's, okay, can I mitigate his boss monsters? Well, they can run like the 5-cost Frieza that like can't be removed by skills, also punishes you if you negate, taps down your stuff, leaves it tapped. Like, it's just from every, now, don't get me wrong, I recognize I'm not playing a meta deck, but like nevertheless, like that card pool is so insane. And you can't even run Turles. Imagine a deck who could. So it's tough, and I feel like I'm going to be complaining about yellow for a good couple of weeks. Still, at least at least with the new set, and I guess that transitions well into kind of like the second half. Like, how do we see things moving forward? At least with the new set, I'll be able to try new things to try and fiddle with it and just see where we can get. And since I do plan on playing the red decks, at least I can apply enough pressure to maybe make an interesting game out of it. But for some decks, like yellow just gatekeeps so incredibly hard. It's like, no, your deck is like not gonna do anything, and my hand size is gonna be 20 when I go in for game. And I think that's gonna be a very common theme moving forward. And this still feels like a ban list that may have an emergency ban list following, in my opinion. It feels very samey to the last one we had, where like, sure, like there's some solid hits here, but it still feels like the big parts of the meta that we're kind of frustrated about are still going to be around. IMO.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. Like yellow kind of be like, you're not swinging more than 18 times per turn. You're done. Are you trying to swing for 18 times a turn or post? You're done. Like it's just like they really just hit both ends of it. Uh it's rough. It's rough.
Yep. Yep. I do know it's appropriate this time though, listeners. I know that we're typically the bitch about yellow podcast, and I am trying to get us to to vary our discussion topics. But hey, we're talking about the ban list and about our future as a card game, and I think that's very relevant to this discussion.
Like if
But
you guys want, if you guys can guarantee that this next podcast, all right, let's do something. Let's do something cute. Let's do something cute. If y'all could guarantee that the next podcast would get over 50, 60 likes and a whole bunch of views, would you be down, George, to have the viewers pick an era in this game? Just pick a era, like a format, and for us to just have a podcast to pretend like we're in that format. Like,
sure, why
I mean,
not?
we could sit here and be complaining about blue yellow storm. We could be well, that's still kind of yellow, but it was yellow in a different way. We could
Uh,
complain about dark Broly.
sure, we can complain about Invoker and Search Piccolo. Yeah.
I'll have to be BSing because I definitely wasn't playing during those times. I'll ask George how the format was, and we'll go from there. I mean, because there have been stupid things in other colors, respectively. It's just been yellow the most.
It has
It's
been.
not
I had a player in my Discord have the audacity to tell me that like I was playing yellow, and I'm not actually mocking you. I'm just kind of saying it for the conversational piece. But they were saying like I was playing yellow when it was bad. I'm like, where? Like yellow was bad like one time in its existence. Like where are you getting off thinking it was bad? It was tricolor Ginyu, and then
I was
Mecha
about to say,
Frieza, and then 1-2 swap, and then 1-2 swap existed for like ever. And then you had a little period after 1-2 swap was gone where like yellow kind of wasn't getting played, but then it was surge format. And then, all right, fuck yeah, draft box cards. So we're playing the draft box cards, we're playing Surge Goku. Then that's gone. Then once again, you kind of get into a little lull where yellow isn't really played. So like there are two instances in the game where I'd say like you could argue yellow was kind of like not okay. But like otherwise, yellow has been dominant, if not the most broken color in the game for most of its lifespan. Just saying.
I mean, you just kind of sit here in this funny space of yellow being the only color that could counterplay things tapped or counterplay them with no effects. And back then, we didn't have a lot of passive or activate main once per turn effects. Most of our effects were come into play effects. So Cold Bloodlust was like the end all be all. You just tapped 4 energy for jack shit. Deal with it, bitch. And then like you move on to, like you said, Mecha Frieza, playing things for the absolute free. Shugesh came into the picture, playing stuff for the absolute free plus Saiyans, which is devastating. And then you've got more non-stereotypically yellow cards, aggro, like you said. And then you have, like you said, the lull. But then yellow comes back with more aggro, except it's on a yellow Frieza Force leader, so you gain back the cold bloodlust. I'm just like, huh.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yellow has never been broken, in my opinion, in terms of yellow as a color identity being yellow. Most of the times, yellow has been, up until this recent format, yellow has only been snapped when they have given yellow tools that were hella outside of yellow's pocket, like free play sands. And actually, I guess swap is still kind of very low costed, stupid sands, and an aggro sand leader, very not yellow. But then in this set, they were like, you know what? It's finally time. The past couple sets, they were like, what if we finally dedicated good card quality to yellow? Yellow control being good. And they were just like, okay, so it's like, yeah, okay, they're creating cards, they're doing developing, but they accidentally knocked in 18 freaking gallons of chemical fucking X, and the control is just too strong. Like counters that draw you cards, tap two that draw you cards, Bergamos that shut off your opponent's turns, Poutines coming out for like just nothing. Like the amount of cards that get triggered in yellow for doing yellow things is sickening. Like you don't even have to go out of your way. Like red has had cards that specifically say your opponent had to lose life through effect for you to touch them. And yellow's like, if you tap something, you get to tap more things. I'm like, well, it's not like there's literally not cards that do this for free while drawing you a card. Oh, wait a second. You right? Let me just for free tap your card and drop a poutine in. For free tap your card, then tap two. Like, ugh.
Yeah. Actually, and you just reminded me, how the hell was Slug not on this errata list at
Dog,
minimum,
I
bro?
didn't mean to remind you. That's plain.
Like it totally slipped my mind, and I guess I was ready to move on, but now I'm right back at it. How the hell is Slug not errata to be a Slug only arm? How is that card okay? How is Annihilator okay? How is the yellow card pool okay?
Oh my god.
Oh my god, I'm gonna have an aneurysm.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna start hating on yellow for hours. Like, are we done with the ban list? You might have to mailbag because I feel like
Yeah,
we're about
yeah.
to
All right,
hate
we're done
me.
with it. We're done with the ban list. Anyways, the next format at least is going to be a little bit more open, and at least yellow has some chinks in its armor where you might be able to catch it. And I think some of the new decks are going to be interesting. So I'm very excited to see what people take out now that they can test DBS Fest. You guys know me. I'm not going to test the format because I never do. I'm just going to pick a deck. I'm going to run with it, and if I get good at the DBS Fest, then all the better. That's what I'm going to do.
So is the way.
Yeah. So, moving on to the SC mailbag. Of course, guys, if you guys want to send us any questions that we answer on air, you can tweet at us with the hashtag SC mailbag, or you can head on over to our Discord and message in the SC mailbag section, and we will answer them on air. So the first one comes from Scuzzy. I love playing green, primarily King Cold, but every time I swap to a different green deck, it just feels so bad to play. What can Bandai do to fix green as a color?
Well, crack my knuckles real quick. See, sir, this is a very, very good question. It is also a very, very hard question. I'm not sure if you watch any of my content, but I have definitely said that it is very, 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 very rough for like I was going through how I feel like the ban list or possible erratas could help the format. And when I got to green, I literally skipped over green. And it's not because I was just trolling, it's not because I was being a hater, but it's literally because there is nothing coming up in this set or anything on the ban list that could be taken off that would help green become a more playable color. Because green doesn't need any changes in what's already in the game. Green needs not even an overhaul. Green needs good building blocks. And right now, green's good pieces might as well be like infinity stones scattered off, except they're not really infinity stones. They're like, can we barely be competitive stones? Like green has some very nice cards scattered about. Charismatic is still a very good unison counterplay. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because charismatic is a counterplay destruction. It gets around deflect. That's stupid. Um, on top of that, you have cards like Dormant, which every time the format gets wide, Dormant is just instant cock block of massive proportions, and it's free. That's kind of stupid. Green has access now to it may have been a sleeper card because it came out in Sand Showdown, but that Vegeta, that King Vegeta unison, without even being played in any decks, is still one of the most snapped
That's
unisons of all time.
so good.
That thing is blowing up monster or battle cards through barrier. It's discarding cards from hand. Like I read that and I was like, wow, it's so good. The green isn't a good color because this card was in the game. Like it's funny if green was a better color. Like who knows? Maybe yellow wouldn't have even survived. Yellow would be like poutine, and like he'd just be like, "All right, King Vegeta, go handle that." And it's gone. It's literally just gone. The hit is a crazy, crazy card. Um, the hit that just is coming out of this set, hit is literally out here just you literally they swing, and when they swing, they have to attack themselves 2 cards they can't attack. And I know early game this may be annoying, but you're still taking out 2 cards of their hand. I will do that. If I can just take 2 cards from their hand before they even have to start committing the combo, before I'm trying to, combo or use like, cards that might make them discard something, I'm fine with that. But when you get to a simplified game state and they might only have a 6 card hand, they have a discard, is a third of my hand worth getting attacks through this turn. Ah, crap. I'm gonna have to find another way to deal with this hit. Like, it'd be great if I had a unison that destroyed monsters through barrier like that. I mean, just it's hit strong. The Goku may be tricky to get online the very first swing because you have to swing on the battle card and then destroy a battle card. But y'all need to understand that Goku doesn't have unique, so Goku can trigger a Goku. Once a single Kaioken blue Goku is on the board from the next set, you could swing at a unison or leader, blow up a battle card on board with an auto before they even have a chance to combo or block with it, and then play another Goku. Like, well, you have to combo and then do some things. There are things you can do, but the Goku rolls into the Goku, rolls into the Goku, and since they're double strike and can also choose to rip cards from hand if they're not destroying things, you could send them at unisons and just start taking cards from your opponent's hand. There is just so much gas that green has scattered. But in terms of what they need, green needs leaders that don't have to hinge upon wacky gimmicks that will only get support for a single set in a tournament pack. That's the first step to making green okay. Like, look at all these other colors. Icarus, straight up generic, doing stuff like that. This new Trunks leader, not generic, archetype leader, but he still has enough space in his deck to be playing good yellow cards. Look at Vegeta, U7 Vegeta from last set starter deck. Dude is very, very strong, but very, very generic. To be honest, all you need to make him work is a single good 2-drop red unison. The rest of the cards can be straight generic fire. Look at Soul Striker. If you can find the last time we had a valid green leader that could run generic green cards without being attached to a gimmick, I don't know what I'll give you, but it'll be a prize because you can't, and I don't have to name a prize on it. Like, you just can't. Green is always tied to some weird ass mechanic that takes up more than half the deck, that has you sitting here wondering why you sleeved up Turles at an 8-round event just to go home sad with no prizes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing, right? It's the leader issue, because there are good green decks, but, and I always say this about archetype decks, some decks are so archetypal that I never really count them as decks of that color. And green is just pretty big on that space, right? We have green Gotenks and green King Cold, which both decks are solid decks. Like, there are decks that I would feel pretty comfortable taking to most tournaments. However, they're archetype decks. Like, I wouldn't call those green decks because their archetype takes up like 90% of the deck, right? And then the generic green cards are the green cards you'd be running in any green deck anyways. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think the way the game should go would be in a place like Icarus, where it's so generic and then your package is like 4 cards in the deck, that every other, or it's like the Soul Striker issue where like every leader becomes suboptimal because you just can't compete with how generic those leaders are. I think, like you said, the Vegeta, the Trunks Vegeta leader that we're getting next set, or the Vegeta leader, like, there is a realm where I think we can find a balance between engines that are sizable, but not so much so that they take up the whole deck. And I think that's where the sweet spot needs to be. Now, that's the sweet spot. Nevertheless, the game is in a spot where some colors just do have incredibly good generic leaders. Blue has Soul Striker, yellow has Icarus, black has a smattering of different leaders depending on what flavor of thwarting you want to play. And then red has a couple, just red's kind of been in a weird spot, which will get fixed in the next set. So when we're talking about green, the big thing is 100% just because it has good generic cards, but there's no leader that carries it, right? Like, when we're talking about green generic leaders, you're just looking at things like Clash Coup and, leaders like those where it's like, sure, they exist, and, they've had a smattering of results, maybe a couple here and there over the past year, but not to a point where you can feel comfortable about being green. And I think a big thing about that is just, at the moment, green's in a point where it's hand destruction or bust. And outside of Cell Surge, the other hand destruction leaders just kind of don't get there. And it's just kind of a shame that entire like color is like kind of stranglehold by what it was doing previously, which is all hand destruction. But green has a great card pool. That unison is snapped. I picked up my SPRs the moment I could, but it's like a $2 SPR at the moment, because like no one plays it. It's which is insane. But green has a solid card pool, and it literally just like Chris was saying, it just needs that building block, just that leader that carries it forward. You know, there are decks that exist that are decent. Um, it's just they're too archetypal, so they don't really count. Red Broly Swap is an example of a non-green deck that I feel is an R-type deck. I wouldn't call it a red deck. It's an R-type deck. So I think green just needs that, and it's kind of like a feedback loop because not only has green needed like a green leader, but for some reason green has been like the gimmick color for like 2.5 sets. So we've just basically lost 6 months of opportunity to be able to remedy this issue because green for some reason has just been the meme color. And before that it was the archetypal color. So in Supreme Rivalry we got King Cold, which is like a good deck. Don't get me wrong, I love King Cold, but it's not really a green deck. And then because I played it and I don't really have that many green staples, which just goes to show. Um, and then after that we got the Goku and Vegeta leaders, which like Keck, okay. And then after that we got Beerus and Champa, which like I'm interested in those leaders, but for reasons that don't really lean on green itself, just because I like to see what I can make work. So it's 100% just needing to go back to the drawing board and figuring out, glue. If anything, I'd say glue. There are some cards like in yellow, Power of a Super Saiyan. That was a glue card that brought the color together. Blue has a couple of glue cards that bring them together between, their unisons, the God Sealings of the world, so on and so forth. Sensubin is a big glue card for blue. What green really has is probably quote unquote a leader and a glue card that kind of unifies everything that it's about to kind of make it be a bit more flexible. Mm-hmm. Or even just the package in general so that you can swap out leaders, right? If we could be in a spot where blue was, where when it had Galactic Buster, you could pivot between any like 6 different blue leaders and all do decently well. Like I think that's a pretty good spot to be into. So I think that's like the general place where green needs to head to. So you can still meme with green, but it very much is just a meme unless you're playing an R-type deck, I think, until maybe the set after Realm of the Gods. Maybe we get something that can kind of bring it together. I think it's just the biggest thing.
I mean, it's unfortunate. It all comes on design. We just need to see it. It sucks when we do get a whole set and then we see that there's no change. We get another set and we see there's no change. And we just know that like every time we see this cycle happen, it's another 3 months. Another 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
Being in the Shadow Realm.
Yeah. And that's, and that even ties to the ban list, right? And like how we feel about the format. It's like, all right, you kind of just like to accept that like what's coming in, it's not right. It's another 3 months of this. It's another 3 months of this. So for green players, I my heart goes out to y'all because 100% it's felt like another 3 months of this for quite a while now. King Cold did rejuvenate the feeling of like green doing stuff, but of course because of how archetypal it is, I can understand how that's kind of a short-lived notion, especially if you want to spread your wings in a color that currently doesn't allow to do so. Yeah. Moving on, we do have our weekly dose of Get 'em. This week,
yeah, boy.
But this week, Cedric decided to give a serious question.
Oh.
For those who are semi-competitive and want to get better at the game, what advice would you give them? Honestly, this is a game that deeply rewards spending time in the hyperbolic time chamber. Know your matchups. Okay, so I think the big thing about semi-competitive players is that they never look outside their bubble. So semi-competitive players play the decks that they like and they kind of stick in that realm, and they like understand like my understanding of semi-competitive is like they play a color or they play a very specific type of decks and they understand those matchups and look up the deck profiles and know the variations of those deck, but if you take them out of that deck, they maybe can't do so well elsewhere, right? And I think the level up or as a player that can not necessarily consistently top a tournament. And I think the level up beyond that is you got to start playing other decks. As much as you hate Icarus, you need to play Icarus because you need to understand what pressure points that deck has. And I think understanding where the pain points of a deck has by playing it means that once you're on the other side of that matchup, once again, you can utilize those pain points to the maximum. And then you can really flex it, right? Like playing against an Invoker player and then playing as Invoker has both taught me ways that like I can deal with my opponent dealing aggro to me, but at the same time, I understand how to aggro an Invoker player. Like I know Invoker's game plan, like 10 out of 10 times I know I can like articulate and script down their turn 1 through 5 plays, And that's just kind of the place you need to be if you want to take that level up. You need to understand every deck what they do from a position of a pilot so that you know how to abuse the ways to beat them. And then between that, it's just getting your reps in. Get your reps in. And obviously, it helps to be surrounded by good players because then your skill ceiling goes up. So, of course, it's a little bit tough to say to just get on a good team when, of course, they only take on the best of the players. But if you have your opportunities to play test against people who know what they're doing, I think that in its own right, seeing the way they think, seeing the way they go through actions, will elevate that. And when you're playing in those games, don't take it as a, of course, try to win. But if it's a practice game, don't take it as an opportunity to win. Just like I play practice games with like people I'm trying to get better with open handed because we're just trying to figure out what the best lines are. So I think those are kind of a few key steps to the biggest thing is just understanding, right? Like I don't practice all that much, but because I make sure that I dabble and understand decks intrinsically every single format, and I just kind of inherently have to do that because my R-Type 101s, I have a great understanding of the card pool generally enough and how decks want to run generally enough that I can jump and pilot any deck to like mediocre success, and that's like without any practice. So I think that's the place where you want to be if you really want to like level up your competitive advantage.
Yeah, I mean, it was really good. Everything George said I was just gonna say get good and scrub because it was good. Everything that was said there was perfect. Your reps, your card knowledge. The only thing I can really add to that, and of course it's another shameless plug, your etiquette. Just even like lots of people don't get into the habit of practicing their etiquette, and this can lead to things because or bad things. Like George was saying, get your reps in, understand your card pool. Between these two things, you're going to get caught off guard so less often, and you're also going to be able to just sharpen up your plays. But even small things that can save you minutes on the clock, things that can like I always I mean, getting your reps in, you're going to see your plays and you're going to be faster at your plays. But even things like practicing siding, like once I think the meta is pretty figured out, I will sit there, like I was saying in my other video, and I'll be like, I'm playing Soul Striker. I've just lost game one. I'm going second or going first on game two. How do I side? I am playing against Cell Surge. I just won game one with my very aggressive deck. I'm going second game two. How do I side? Which games do you side out the foo? What are you siding in for the foo? And this is important because some people will be like, oh, yeah, I have 3 dabs in my side and I have 3 monkeys and I'm playing blue. But then they sit down at the table and they go, oh, shit, what am
You
I
got
taking out for
you
these
got to
6
take cards out,
cards?
boy.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and they're sitting there wasting valuable 2, 3 minutes on the clock when they're playing a deck that isn't going to finish the game before turn 7. And that's a huge thing. Practicing siding, practicing matches with a time limit. If you guys notice for my fight nights, I always put the clock to 60 minutes, and in at least 2 of them, I've ended the game when the 60 minutes ran out, declared it a win for this guy because he won game 1, or a tie because we're in game 3 and we're going into time, and we've gone like you need to practice on the clock too because you need to understand the speed of your plays matters almost just as much as the critical thinking and the just actual validity of your plays themselves. So yeah, I just add that onto it. Etiquette needs to be practiced as well, so you don't get caught lacking when we have these time matches.
Yeah, 100%. I think, and I'm really bad at this. I know I'm supposed to do it, and I never do, and I just kind of like. And again, this is just because I never practice. But I built a sideboard, and I just YOLO it in tournament. But the appropriate thing to do is have a sideboard guide, make one, memorize it, and just know that when it, like Chris was saying, if you are a blue deck going into a Cell Surge matchup, you just know that game 2, and this matters a lot because we are going into pre-sided games now. So you guys are gonna have to side before the game, and you guys get 1 minute to do so. Now I don't think anyone's gonna rule shark you if you take a minute, like an extra 20 seconds or whatever, but that's something you guys are going to need to know. You're going to need to start understanding your sideboards. So have your sideboard guide and understand that, yeah, you can have a ton of cards in your sideboard, but you need to pull cards out of your deck to put them in. So understand what those cards are before you're sitting at a critical point in a tournament, and it could mean between the difference between winning or losing the game or the match.
Heck yeah.
Moving on to his non-serious question, because of course you had to have one. You got to make a team of Dragon Ball characters for your favorite sport. Who are you picking and why?
Um, I don't think it. You don't even really have to try it. Like you have to include Yamcha on your team. It doesn't
What?
matter what sports you're. Yeah, dude.
What? He's slower
Yeah.
than like. Yeah, yeah. Of course, Yamcha's your guy if you're playing against humans.
Nah, nah, nah. See, here's the thing. You get Vegeta on a football team. Vegeta's gonna tackle somebody to death on an accident. Goku is going to throw a baseball and it's going to shatter somebody's hand. And there are going to be questions. You might get somebody thrown out. Like, there are things like that. I'm instantly drafting Yamcha and Gohan and Krillin because those three will understand that they need to play within a certain realm to be effective and not draw suspicion. Yamcha is striking out every person that gets up to bat because he is using the spirit ball technique to alter the trajectory of his balls. They're like, yo, that's a huge curveball. How did that happen? Yamcha's like, it's all in the throw. But in reality, this dude just curved this fucking ball like it's wanted. And like it, you have to do that. Like, I'm not just gonna draft half the Z fighters because I think they would get out of hand and get me in trouble.
I think you just need Gohan.
Gohan is the legendary Harvard Super Saiyan, so
like
that
like
is
I
facts.
like it's like you just gotta compare, right? Like I guess if you're drafting a Dragon Ball like sport team, like maybe you're going up against people who are of the same caliber as the Z fighters, and then like okay, then like maybe we have something interesting going on there. And then at that point, I think you just have to stick to the smart characters, right? Because when it comes to sports, and like if everyone is like 99 overall stats across every single stat, at that point it's more so how you play the game versus the actual numbers, right? Like I don't care how much stronger Goku is in a lot of situations. If you can outmaneuver, outplay him, and outforce his momentum to throw him out of the field, well, guess what? You're out of bounds, bro. So I think on that front, you just take the smart characters and then you just kind of run with it. But even then, it's just so like scaling so bad in Dragon Ball. So just some characters scale so incredibly beyond any of the other characters. It's just kind of like why. So and very much why the show is Vegeta and Goku show, because it is. Every other character exists to delay the clock until they show up. So like watch this the new Dragon Ball superhero movie be where Goku and Vegeta come in at the end to save the day.
Nah,
As much watch it be Gohan's movie and then they cuck him by making Vegeta save the day like he did in like Resurrection F or Goku did, where they just let's reverse time and blow up Frieza.
all I know is that they're releasing more and more little blurbs, and Home Dog Skizzy straight up has said that in this movie they really really wanted to focus on the master student relationship of Gohan and Goku, or Gohan and Piccolo, plus Pan just being like
Pan,
actually in there. And I'm like, all right, I dig it, but like I'm just I'm just saying. I do want to say, like, in terms of feats though, like, Vegeta's out here doing his thing, seeing Jiren's punches. You're seeing Goku clearing his mind and all this stuff. And then Gohan on another level. Again, this is the sort of strength you too can gain by going to college. Gohan was blinded by poison gas and he expanded his ki across the entire field and was literally feeling the feedback from his ki. This man made a ki sonar to beat Lavender's ass. I don't care what, like, that IQ play, dude. Like, if Gohan was just actually strong at the same time, he would body the rest of the cast. Like, that brain power was ridiculous. Oh my gosh, that was crazy to me. That was absolutely crazy to me. I was like, wow, that's smart. That's super smart.
true, true. I'll give him that. It just feels like to me that whenever you give him an achievement, you also have to remember that he got strong by meditating on a rock for like half a day, and his muscle mass like tripled.
It
So,
was the worst part was it wasn't even like it's almost worse than that. Like, it literally is almost worse than that, because like we want to say he meditated on a rock, but like that episode was horrendous. He literally came out and was like, I'm gonna fight you, Piccolo. And Piccolo was like, all right, show me how strong you can get. And Gohan goes to Super Saiyan 2, not even gonna talk about how much of a plot hole it is, and then Piccolo chokes him out. Meaning that somehow from then till now, Piccolo has obtained strength beyond a Super Saiyan 2 out of shape Gohan, which again was wild. His power creep wasn't as strong as 17's, but I'm still kind of like, what? And then we get to a point where they are in the rain, and Piccolo, dead ass, the conversation was, Gohan, yes, Piccolo, there was a point where you weren't a bitch. Yes, Piccolo, become that not bitch again. Yes, Piccolo. And then the dude hits a form that's over 20 years old, but it made a hole in the ozone layer like it was brand spanking new. And bam, he's now able to throw hands with Super Saiyan Blue Goku. I said, what? All this talk about Gohan slacking on this training, and all Piccolo had to do was like, remember when you whooped Cell's ass? Yeah. Remember when you whooped Boo's ass? Yeah. Do it again. And Gohan was like, you're right. And I'm like, bro, like, wait.
Yeah,
I'd rather
bro.
see 17's off-screen ass pool than this. Like, and I'm a Gohan fan. Like, excuse me. Oh
It's
man.
just it's a shame because I love Gohan, but character
Gohan
development in Dragon Ball is just trash. It is not why we watch the show.
Dude, Gohan could gain the Kaioken next episode, and they would give it the production value of Goku using Ultra Instinct Sign for the first time. Like I've just noticed this. Like Gohan went Super Saiyan 2 in the World Tournament Arena. That scene is a 2-page scene in the manga. 2 pages. It's just, you want to see something beyond Super Saiyan? Kibito? Oh yeah. And then he just powers up. In the anime, Toei was like, blow up the stadium. But it's really not that. I said blow up the fucking stadium. And then like that's that. And then we literally get the same thing for Ultimate Gohan. They were like, all right, he's gonna get Ultimate Gohan. It's gonna be pretty cool. They're like, okay, but what if like it took 5 minutes and we literally back up to a global view and it like literally changes the weather? Like it changes the weather and it just literally puts a hole in the
Yeah.
ozone. And they're like, I don't see why we shouldn't. And another dude's in the background, like, well, because it's really not that serious. Like, Goku goes Super Saiyan Blue, and it doesn't change the weather. So why would Gohan? You're fired, Hideaki. What? Like, but what? You're fired. I said, pack up your shit and leave. Like, it's wild just looking at the forms that don't cause that amount of effect on the planet, and then watching Gohan's bum ass form from the Buu saga change the weather. I'm like, you know what? I'll take it. It's a Gohan episode. I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah. So those were the questions from the SC mailbag. Of course, if you guys want to ask us a question and answer on air, then just tweet at us with the hashtag SC mailbag or ask us on our discords and we'll get to them live on air. But with that said, that was our biggest topic of today. The ban list, of course, the big hot topic that everyone wants to talk about, that we've been talking about. And I'm actually surprised we got it as early as we did. I really thought they were going to hold on to it, but hey, at least now we get to prep for DBS Fest properly. And I'm excited to see what people will take to these tournaments and what we can do with them.
Yeah, to like just add on to you, I think it was a good move. Like I understand what you were saying about preserving the freshness of the format, but these best of one pre-side games, I'm not sure if I would fly to Texas or Miami with only a week or two to understand how this format shapes up, and then in the same week or two figure out my perfect 15, knowing each fight is going to be a single shot.
Howard.
That's
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I get it. I think competitively, it's the most fair thing. It's just I'm thinking as a casual when I think about the freshness of the format for sure.
Yo.
Which is fine. I think both sides need to be respected from time to time. So, with that said, that's our podcast for the week, guys. Sorry for the late episode. Both me and Chris kind of zonked out at 10 yesterday. I completely forgot about it. But with that said, Chris, what do you got lined up for this week? What can people expect out of your stuff?
It's just kind of the same as last week, to be honest.
I mean, that's okay.
I mean, I'll be looking over some of the cards going to this format. There's a couple of things. I just got to figure out what it is.
Fair.
Literally figure out what it is.
On my end, it's more of the same. Of course, I have a very fluctuating upload schedule at the moment, just because trying to balance a lot of different things between Dragon Ball and the My Hero stuff I've been doing lately. But we'll be looking to go back to some discussion videos. I've got some topics pinned down, and oddly enough, those are the videos I spend the least amount of time editing, but they're the ones that get the best views. So maybe I should just focus on doing more discussion content. But nevertheless, gonna be running that on my end. And of course, we got the Twitch streams. I have upgraded the Twitch stream. I've added some fun stuff. So if you guys want to check out the Thursday locals I do, you guys should definitely want to jump in. And I'll really be looking forward to showing you guys the new stuff on the stream.
Sweet.
Yeah. So with that said, guys, thank you very much for tuning in to the Super Combo Podcast. It's been Espira and Chris coming at you. And of course, until we talk again next week, best of luck with your top decks.
Yeah.